you're not going to cause some vast, I mean, like the want for want of a nail, the horseshoe was lost, and so on and so forth. Yes, but only if you have a whole bunch of other causes flowing in to lead to, the loss of the kingdom at the end of the rhyme. So there are these factors in cause and effect that have to be understood, or you're going to try causing vast changes with half-vast, if you'll excuse my expression, capacities or causes.
It sounds like a lot of common sense.
Well, yes. It's just common sense has been rather in short supply in recent years.
Isn't that the truth?
Yeah, you'd think that it would be common sense to look at the fact that we've already burnt our way through about half the world's original petroleum supply, and that it's going to be harder to get, it's going to be lower quality, it's going to be much more expensive to pump out, it's beginning to run short, we can't simply increase the supplies. This means we have to scale back and not, just put the pedal to the metal and just try to keep on leading the rip-roaring lifestyles we've had in the last, few decades. But that's a piece of common sense that's beyond a lot of people, and especially beyond a lot of politicians.
Well, of course, and then there's the other alternative, John, where all these great minds that are putting things on Mars could bring their minds back to this planet and find alternative energy.
Well, yes. And we could also learn to use the amount of energy we naturally get
responsibly
from wind and things like that efficiently. Mm-hmm. We are so sloppy in our energy use. I mean, it does not take the amount of energy that an American or a Canadian uses in the course of a year to fuel a comfortable lifestyle. You go to Europe, they use about a third as much, and, they have like civilized lifestyles, or they don't live in caves or anything. In many ways, their lifestyles are better than ours, and yet they use a third the energy we do. We could do the same thing easily, but we won't, because on the one hand we're not too bright about energy. On the other hand, a lot of people are making a lot of money off of selling us more energy than we need.
Well, we're a very wasteful society as well, John. You can see that by the amount of garbage we generate, and the amount of food that just goes into the garbage disposal units.
It just goes into the waste stream. Yeah, pollution is a resource that is in the wrong place. Yeah. But and this is in nature. Everything cycles back around. One creature's waste stream is another creature's food supply, and we can do this ourselves with something as simple as a compost heap. Instead, we flush it down the garbage disposal or what have you, and it ends up becoming a problem for someone else.
Yeah, we pass our problems along instead of facing them, acknowledging them, and fixing them.
And fixing them, and then learning that there are benefits to fixing them. Yeah. And since we pass them along, so does the other person, and again, they come around and bite us in the butt.
Yeah.
That's the law of wholeness.
What's the law of planes, John?
The law of planes, this is something that really is primarily addressed at some of the mistaken notions in the spiritual communities these days. The law of planes it points out that different kinds of things that we experience function on what people in the mystery traditions call different planes of existence. We have thoughts, okay? A thought may be a thing, but it's not the same kind of thing as, say, a brick. And there are ways you can move from the plane of thoughts to the plane of bricks and vice versa, but it's not an automatic thing. So the people who spend all of their time, trying to think themselves into prosperity, let's say, yes, you can accomplish some things that way, especially if it's your thinking and the actions based on your thinking that are keeping you poor, usually by spending more money than you earn. But if you just expect your thoughts to affect the material world straight off, you're going to run into one problem after another. In the same way, people spend their time chasing wealth, filling their houses with all the crap and all of the, filling their storage lockers with stuff they don't actually want. They're actually trying to fill an emotional need, but they think they can do it by manipulating physical matter. They can't, and so they're caught in this sort of hamster wheel process. So the law of planes is that it's very important to differentiate the plane on which anything you're actually trying to achieve actually takes place. Is it a thought? Is it emotion? Is it a brick? Or what?
All right, the final law that we have here is the law of evolution.
The law of evolution, and there we're going to have to unhook, about 100, more than that now, but well over 150 years of gibberish.
Wow.
people say evolution and they think progress.
Yeah.
We have this fantasy of progress. We have this religion of progress in the modern industrial world. We think that the universe has handed us a ticket that says that everything gets better over time. That's not, I mean, that's the whole idea. My children should have a better life than I do, off in the future. Eventually we'll go zooming off into space to some kind of Star Trek future, metastasizing across the galaxy. No. Evolution is just adaptation to circumstances. That's all it is. It doesn't go anywhere. It doesn't lead anywhere. It's not this sort of grand march of progress with us, of course. Humanity is the leading edge. I mean, this fantasy that we're more evolved than other things, that some people are more evolved than us, is garbage. We've all been through exactly the same, 2.5 billion years of evolution as a blue-green algae. In fact, they got it right. They got it right about 1.5 billion years ago. They haven't had to fix anything since. We're still trying to get it right. But so evolution is simply it's a process of adaptation over time. And the point of the law of evolution is that it points out that things change over time, that they change by adapting to changing circumstances, and that they're not leading to any grand and glorious goal. We can't sit on our hind end and wait for the rapture. We can't sit on our hind end and wait for 2012 to bring a marvelous new age of consciousness that we don't have to work for.
It's not going to happen.
It's not going to happen. Yeah. We're going to get exactly the world that we ourselves are willing to build with our own thoughts, our own actions, our own choices.
And the funny part, John, well, it's not funny, it's very pathetic, is that over the years, throughout the centuries, we have not learned through our mistakes. We still keep on making the same mistakes, doing the same thing, looking for a different reaction. It's insane.
Evolution is a slow process. We have not yet adapted to the fact that our minds can come up with fantasies that are very emotionally appealing, but that don't actually have anything to do with the world in which we happen to live. And I think eventually, over millennia to come, we may finally grasp that detail, and then the world will be a rather different place for us. But until then, it's purely a matter of people like people like me, like other mystery teachers out there, who are saying, okay, here are some things to think about that cast the world in a very different light, and why don't you think about your life in this context? Why don't you try practicing a little meditation, let's say, and see if you can get your mind a little clearer? Maybe even, step back out of all the yelling and chaos and confusion, and think for yourself for a change.
You know what, John? I believe in my heart of hearts that technology is working against us.
Oh, yeah.
It's come to a point where families don't talk. They text each other. You've got people who finish their job, they rush home to enter a world of virtual reality that isn't real because they can be who they want to be in a fantasy life.
Absolutely. Or they could just turn on the television and absorb themselves in the in the activities and emotions of people who don't actually exist. Which is the thing is, all that technostructure is a way of running away from the basic realities of human existence, and it depends on having these immense amounts of highly concentrated, cheap energy, which we're using up. So I see the problem with technology in that sense as self-correcting. As the availability of energy goes down, as the availability of resources go down, as the price of both goes up, a lot of people are going to find themselves suddenly deposited outside of their virtual reality back in the real world. And then they're going to have to learn.
It's going to be very hard for them, though.
It's going to be a rough road. Evolution usually is.
When people talk about druids, John, the first thing that they think of, and this is based on what I have done over the last 20 years talking to people, is they do an automatic connection between a druid and Stonehenge.
Stonehenge, yeah.
What did the druids actually do at Stonehenge?
They didn't. Well, I mean, not until about 300 years ago. As far as we know, Stonehenge, I mean, nobody's really sure. There were no written records. Nobody knows when the Druids got started, the original ancient Celtic Druids, I should say, when they got started, because they also didn't keep any written records. One of the few things we know about them is that they thought that writing was a bad idea. They thought that it spoiled your memory. And so it's a technology thing. Yeah, this hot new technology called writing. I don't know about that. but the current theory is that Stonehenge was built some hundreds of years at least. I mean, well, the oldest aspect of it was some thousands of years, but it was finished some hundreds of years before the first of the Celtic peoples came to Britain, and those were the people who had druids as their priests and intellectuals. Starting in about what would it have been? It would have been the early 1700s, when you had the beginning of the Druid revival of people who were inspired by what little was known of the ancient Druids and went out to create a nature-based spirituality, in contradiction to the orthodox religion of the time and to the very dogmatic scientific materialism of the time. A lot of them, because of course nobody knew when Stonehenge had been built back in those days, back in the 18th century. And so they thought, well, there were these druids, and here's this ancient thing that is right out there in the open, surrounded by, the sky and the wind and the grass and everything. I bet it was a druid temple. They were wrong, but it was still a cool place to go and celebrate the solstices and so on. And so since sometime in the 18th century, modern druids have been going to Stonehenge, and I've been there. I've celebrated the summer solstice there. It's a lovely place to do a ritual.
Did you feel anything, any spiritual presence? Did you feel any earth powers?
Less so there. I think it's had too many tourists. Oh. To be quite frank, there are some of the old stone circles where there's definitely a feeling of something very alive in the ground. Yeah. But Stonehenge, it's been asleep for a long time, I think. But it's still a very beautiful place. You're standing there just before dawn. We were fortunate, one of those rare days when it's actually clear and sunny in Britain. I know that's not supposed to happen. But we were lucky. There we were, the wind blowing across the grass and the big gray stones against the gray, slowly lightening sky, and then the sun rises in the east right over the Heelstone. It was great.
So is the Stonehenge formation just an ancient observatory?
We have no idea.
No,
lots of people have all kinds of speculations. I mean, probably the funniest one that I ever saw was the guy who came up with his bogus website on ancient Druid computers, claiming that Stonehenge was actually a computer complex.
Well, there you go. That goes to prove my comment about modern technology.
Modern technology, yeah.
John, stand by, my friend. You and I have to take our final break for this hour. X-Zone Nation, John Michael Greer is our special guest. His new book, Mystery Teachings from the Loving Earth. His blog site is the archdruidreport.blogspot.com. John Michael Greer and I will return on the other side of this break. Don't go away.
There is no place safe and no safe place to put my head when you can feel the world shake from the words that I said. And I call it all angels. And
With each new extreme weather event or terrorist act, it becomes increasingly obvious that we live in uncertain and challenging times. We all buy car insurance. Why not collapse and catastrophe insurance? Matthew Stein, an MIT-trained engineer and green builder, has written 2 outstanding books to help people prepare, plan for, and deal with everything from minor situations lasting a few days to full-on collapse. Matt's first book, When Technology Fails, is a manual for self-reliance, sustainable living, and surviving the long emergency. This massive book covers the gamut from first aid and emergency preparedness to alternative healing, renewable energy, primitive living skills, and 18th century technologies that could be critical to your comfort and survival in a long-lasting crisis. Matt's second book, When Disaster Strikes, is a comprehensive emergency preparedness handbook and survival guide. When Disaster Strikes is an essential item for every family's go bag. Both books are available at all usual sources. There's a wealth of totally free information posted at whentechfails.com, and author-signed copies may be purchased at mattstein.com. That's www.whentechfails.com and www.mattstein.com.